Good evening and welcome to tonight's Zoning Board of Appeals hearing. Let me introduce some members of town government that assist this board. To my left is Vincent Pizzulli, attorney to the board. To his left is Blaise Donadio, a planner in the planning department. You are all here tonight seeking relief from the Smithtown zoning ordinances, and it's our job to try to help you achieve the relief you are requesting whenever possible. It's up to you to provide us with precise, accurate information so we as a board can make a decision based on the facts that you present here tonight. We as a board must consider the 5 following conditions. They're listed here for you. Number 1, whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the variance. Number 2, whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other means. Number 3, whether the variance is substantial. Number 4, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. And number 5, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created. Procedures for tonight's meeting. Cases will be called in the order they are advertised. When you are called, please present your certificates of postings and mailings to Mr. Donadio. Then you will be asked to go to the podium where you will state your name and address for the record and then proceed to tell us why you need your variance. At the end of your presentation, if anyone in the audience would like to speak on your case, they will be given 1 opportunity to do so. Then the applicant can come back to the podium to answer their concerns. Once the public hearing is closed, no further information will be accepted concerning the case. There are 3 ways to find out about your case. You could stay after the hearing, but there's no guarantee that your case will be acted on tonight. You can call the planning office tomorrow, or you can wait and be notified by mail. We do have 3 adjournments tonight. The first one is case 18214, Marion Joseph Stoddard. Is anybody here for that case? That has been adjourned until October 8th. The next case is case 18220, White Glove Auto Spa, Inc. Anyone here for that case? That has been adjourned to November 12th. And the third case is case 1-18201, George Diffendale. That has been adjourned till October 22nd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First case on the agenda, case number 18213, David Antwerk, 9 Somerset Drive, Smithtown. The location of the property is the north side of Somerset Drive, 130 feet west of Noel Place. The property is zoned R43. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum front yard from 60 feet to 57 feet for a proposed 20 square foot front porch addition. Reduce the minimum side yard from 24 feet to 15 feet for an existing 100 square foot shed on the south property line. To reduce the minimum side yard from 24 feet to 17 feet for an existing 143 square foot shed on the north side property line, and reduce the total side yards from 60 feet to 32 feet for both existing sheds.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you? Yes, so as Mr. Donadio stated, we are seeking...
Excuse me, can you just state your name and address for the record,
I'm sorry,
please?
yes. David Antwerk, A-N-T-W-O-R-K. I'm here with my wife, Morgan. We reside at 9 Somerset Drive, Smithtown, New York, 11787. And we are seeking the variances that were stated. We are looking to do a small addition on our home that we purchased in December of 2014. In order to do so, we are looking to extend the front porch, which requires a de minimis setback variance of 60 feet to 57 feet. We discovered that we needed additional variances for the sheds, which pre-existed us purchasing the property. So those are being requested in connection with this project and have to be taken care of first. The standard for area variances are certainly met. It's laid out in the application, of course, but the variances are not substantial in size, and they do not impact neighboring properties in terms of drainage or anything of that nature. The variance will not have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood. There are many similar sheds all throughout my neighborhood. I bought the house with these sheds, which leads me to number 5. The difficulty was not self-created. I did not put up these sheds. I bought the house. They were existing. As far as I know from the prior owner, they might have even predated him. I tried to get in touch with him when I was going through this application process, and he's not even sure when they were erected. He says maybe 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Like I said, I bought the house in 2014. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application? No? Planning?
No, thank you.
No? Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Moved and second, all in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18215, Joseph DeGuerra, 233 Southern Boulevard, Wisconsin. The location of the property is the east side of Southern Boulevard, 769 feet south of Smithtown Boulevard. The property is zoned R15. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the front yard setback from 45 feet to 32 feet for an existing 178 square foot portico. Reduce the front yard from 45 feet to 41 feet for an existing 61 square foot first floor addition and 28 square foot second floor balcony. Reduce the minimum side yard from 16 feet to 15 feet for an existing 468 square foot attached garage addition and existing 340 square foot deck. Reduce the minimum side yard from 16 feet to 0 for an existing 750 square foot steel carport and existing 144 square foot shed. Reduce the total side yards from 34 feet to 0 for an existing 468 square foot attached garage addition, existing 340 square foot deck, existing 750 square foot steel carport, and existing 144 square foot shed. Increase the square footage from 750 square feet to 868 square feet for an existing attached garage. Increase the height of an accessory structure from 15 feet to 17 feet for an existing 750 square foot steel carport. Increase the maximum permitted paving in the front yard from 25% to 40%, in the south side yard from 25% to 100%, in the north side yard from 25% to 65%, and in the rear yard from 25% to 33% for existing paving. Reduce the distance to any lot line from 1 foot to 0 for existing paving. Reduce the distance to a lot line from 3 feet to 1 foot for an existing pool pump.
Good evening.
Hello, how are you?
Certainly.
Hello, I'm Joe DeGuara, and I live at 233 Southern Boulevard, Wisconsin.
All right. Is this gentleman going to speak on your behalf?
I'm going to speak, and if I have a technical question that you need answered, I asked him to stand with.
All right.
He's our expediter.
Could you just introduce yourself, please? Spell your last name and give your address for the record, please.
Absolutely. Andreas Sofoklis, Sofoklis, 49 Blossom Avenue, Holtzville, New York.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
You ready?
Yep.
All right. The reason that we're here is I'm filing for these variances for enhancements that I made to my home. I've been living there for 22 years, my wife and I, and we now have a few children. We added a portico to the front of the house, and apparently it needed a variance after the permits were done, and I was not really aware of that. So that was a surprise to me that there was a couple of feet difference there. So we're looking to rectify the portico problem with this variance. I've enhanced my property by widening the driveway and putting some pavers down. We have a couple of cars in the driveway most of the time, and I needed some extra space. Everything that I've done to the home has made the home, that much more magnificent. The portico in front of the house, most of the space is from the front stoop. That's encroaching on the distance to the street. It's not actually the portico. We made the stoop a little bigger, and this is where we ran into a problem. The carport that is in question, that's along the back side of the house, that's up against my south side neighbor's property, was something that I put up, started to put up, it's not finished yet, to cover my RV. I purchased a 45-foot motorhome. It's very expensive, and I wanted to protect it from the weather. I did have sort of like a temporary carport that they sell for RVs up there, and during the winter it collapsed due to ice. So I opted for a significant structure that would fit the RV. It's 13 feet high and 50 feet long, and that's why that carport is being requested on the variance. The pool shed, the deck, there was a deck on the house. When we bought the house, we did increase that deck size by a little bit. Everything that we've done, we've just made the house as beautiful as we could. And we believe that it's a positive impact on the neighborhood from anybody who drives by it. So, the stuff was created by me. It was something that I did to the home. I don't believe that I have an environmental impact with it. Everything was done to the code. The carport was built to withstand 130-mile-an-hour wind load that the town required, and I didn't feel that I could get that out of a wood structure. So I built it out of steel. General Steel was the company who fabricated and engineered and designed the structure. And 130-mile-an-hour wind was what it was designed to handle. And again, I'm just trying to protect my RV. It's not enclosed. It will not have electric. It doesn't have walls. It doesn't have a door. It's just a carport, that's designed to keep snow and ice and rain and sun off my bus. That's why I put it in there.
Well, at the beginning, you had said the carport's not finished. What's left to do with it? You're not enclosing it, right?
No, I was stopped by the town, so I stopped working on it. So there's
Right.
like 7 more pieces of roof that need to be put on. It's sheet metal, so I didn't do that. And then I have some other beautification, paint. I want to paint it. I want to make it look nicer than it does right now, but I've stopped all that work. It's primed right now. The roof is finished in a sandstone color, and the walls are beige. The side comes down about this far, as the drawings show, and that's just a little different color to make it look nice for anyone who has to see it.
You don't have any commercial vehicles stored on your property?
No, sir. No.
That carport's very close to the property line.
Well, I do have a letter from the neighbor next door, Joe Caviola. We provided copies over to you, and I did consult with the whole family of the Caviolas when I was entertaining the carport. They saw that the original plastic shed, if you will, the plastic ones that you buy and you put up and you can drive underneath them to store your car, well, we had a bigger one for the RV, and they were out there helping me get the ice off of it when it collapsed. So they were well aware that I was putting up this other structure, and there's a letter provided by them that's saying they are okay with it, because they primarily see it from their yard. Right. The building is 30-plus feet off my rear property line. And other than looking directly on it from my driveway, Joe's house is the house that can see it the most. It's neat, it's clean, it's engineered, it's designed, it's a very nice piece of, structure, and it should withstand any kind of environmental impact that happens to it for any weather conditions. And I'd appreciate if the board could, consider it, because it's a very expensive RV. It's,
Anyone on the board have any questions?
No, thanks.
Planning?
It's a lot of stuff, very substantial variances, but I do have a question for Mr. DeGuerra. In looking at the photograph, I'm assuming that the bus, which is the white and gray and black bus that's parked near the front of the carport, is the bus that you want to park inside the carport. There's also a rather large triple-axle trailer that's parked in the back of that carport. Is that going to be staying there as well, or are you going to be putting that somewhere else on the property, or?
Well, typically, the plan is that the RV would be under the carport. The car trailer is for my race car trailers.
Okay.
I do a lot of racing, and that's my trailer. So it is usually in front of the RV, but most of the time it's in my office. When I bring it home is when I have to rebuild the car between races. So I take it home, and most of the time it's there for that reason, when I have maintenance to do on the race car. So otherwise, I leave it at my office.
Okay. That's really about it.
All right. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Come on up, please. Good evening. Could you pull the microphone down? Could you state your name, spell your last name, and give your address, please, for the record?
Nadine Marchese, Marchese, and my address is 46 Lawrence Drive, Wisconsin. I live directly behind Joe, I believe. Okay, I'm objecting to the steel carport. It's an eyesore. This is a residential area, and they added what looks like a two-story commercial structure. It's going to bring down the value of my house. I paid $23,000 in taxes, and I don't feel that every time I look out my back windows, I have to look at that monstrosity. And it is a monstrosity. And I also have pictures.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it. That's all.
All right, you just want to close it? And that's all you have to say?
That's it.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else? Come on up, please. Good evening.
My name is Ray Grimaldi. I live at 37 Lawrence Drive. I have,
Could you spell your last name, please,
Sure.
Ray, for the record?
certainly, Grimaldi.
Thank you.
My house is across, well, I should say behind Mr. DeGuara's house, and I have visibility from my driveway through. And I want to say at no point has that structure been an eyesore to my family. My tax is $27,000, and I don't take offense to that structure. I would welcome the board's consideration to show some leniency to Joe. He's a firefighter in this town. He helps all his neighbors, including myself, and I think he's just a gentleman and an asset to this town. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else like to be heard in this application? No one else? Would you like to come back and answer the young lady's concerns?
Nadine, I don't know her last name, but Nadine lives sort of halfway behind my property. There's one house halfway here, and one house halfway here. Her house takes up some of my backyard, so does the other one. I had on one occasion when she invited me into her backyard about 8 months ago, because we were trimming some bushes and she thought some stuff fell into her yard, to go into her yard, and I videotaped the areas that she thought I was having my landscaper do a little too much work, and I can't see my own carport from standing in her backyard next to her swimming pool. So this was a surprise to me that she says it bothers her and she can see it. Maybe she can see it out of her second-story window, but certainly not from her backyard. Mr. Grimaldi, I didn't know he was coming today. It was nice of him to attend. He lives between those two houses, but across the street in their little community on Lawrence Drive, so he can see my backyard even clearer than she can, because there's no trees between my house and his, there's just some arborvitae's bushes. So when he says that he doesn't take offense to it, he can see it, but he doesn't take offense to it. It's not an obtrusive thing. It looks a little bit wrong right now because it's not finished. I need to finish it and put the roof on it and, beautify it and finish it with gutters and drain the water and whatever's on the plans. So, if I was building a house in my backyard and somebody stopped me, it would look like an obtuse item until it was finished. So that's, what I have to say. I don't believe that unless she looks over the fence and wiggles her way through all of her bushes, that she can actually see into my backyard. Because there's that much foliage and original forestry that was in our backyards that's still there.
All right,
That's it.
thank you. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
When you ask anybody, raise your hand a little bit. Raise the hand to come up.
You got, what did Kenny Rogers say? You gotta know when to hold. All right. Yeah. The next case on the agenda, case number 18216, CKB Realty, 271 Lake Avenue, St. James. The location of the property is the east side of Lake Avenue, 57 feet south of 6th Street. The property is zoned CB. The applicant is requesting a variance to reduce the minimum required parking from 11 to 5 spaces, which are existing.
Good evening.
Hello, how are you? John Gleason, 336 6th Avenue, St. James, architect for CKB Realty. Thank you. We're here tonight for CKB Realty. It is the same company, Kaz Balsano, that owns AccuManage Construction. They're construction managers. He bought this building maybe about 6 years ago on Lake Avenue, 271 Lake Avenue. It's really one of the nicest buildings on Lake Avenue, I would think. AccuManage moved out of this building about 3 years ago, so it's been vacant for about 3 years. They needed more space for their commercial trucks, their heavy equipment, for their construction business, and so they moved to Bohemia. They've been in the process of trying to sell the building for a couple years now. They have a tentative agreement with an all-state insurance brokerage to buy this building and maintain an office. So the all-state insurance brokerage will take possession of the building, move their office into the structure. The problem is that the second floor of this building has a CO for storage. So we are proposing to make the second floor office space, which in turn bumped our parking requirements up to 11 spots. And there are 5 existing on the site currently. But remember, this is on Lake Avenue, commercial district in the hamlet. So that's why I don't think it's going to be a major detriment or effect for the parking use for this site. On the way here, from Railroad Avenue to Woodlawn, I counted 15 vacant storefronts on Lake Avenue currently in the hamlet. And I think it's a benefit to have an all-state insurance brokerage occupy and be the owner of this very nice building in St. James. And I'll entertain any questions that you may have.
So Allstate's going to occupy the first floor and the second floor?
Correct, the entire building, yes.
So if they have 4 employees,
They have 5 spots, yes.
you have 5 spots for a customer to come in and,
Well, They have on-street parking. I know that, that doesn't usually, you know, but it's there. That's what we're here for.
Okay.
Building is, you know, conditioned. It's a small building. It looks big from the outside. It's got a big front porch, side stairs, you know, for an exit stair. But footprint, under 550 square feet each floor. It's almost under 1,100 square feet. It's not a large building at all. We probably put like 2 desks in there and conference room upstairs.
All right.
I don't think there's gonna be very much vehicular traffic. Most of the stuff
Yeah.
is done online and everything else these days, you know. Just have a presence in town,
All right.
okay?
Anyone else on the board have any questions?
No, thanks.
Planning?
No, thank you.
No. Anyone in the audience like to speak on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please? Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
I like this.
He's never ready.
Thank you.
Yep.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18217, Diane, excuse me, Aversa, 18 Cloister Street, Hauppauge, the location of the property, bless you, the south side of Cloister Street, 98 feet east of Gatewood Drive. The property is zoned R15. The applicant is requesting a variance to increase the maximum permitted paved surface in the front yard from 25% to approximately 40%, which is existing.
Evening.
Good evening. My name is Darren Aversa. This is my wife Diane and 3 of my 4 cherubs over there. We're asking for a variance on our driveway that's we just built. Didn't realize that we needed a variance to put 700 extra square feet onto our driveway, but we did. We put beautiful stone on. We put an apron, gorgeous walkway. It puts no stress onto the neighborhood. Actually makes it, if you could take a look, it makes the neighborhood look better. Yeah, I did self-create this, but I don't know what to say.
Okay.
Needed extra space for the children.
Oh yeah, by the way, we did it before
We live on a
because,
very, yes, I'm Diana Versa, and my voice is, I'm a teacher, so my voice is going already. But the children, my children, we live on a very busy corner, so they come off of that, turning off of 347 onto our street, and it's dangerous. So we added extra room. My children play basketball, and you can't put a basketball in the street, so we have it in our driveway. So that was the only reason why we expanded the driveway.
Okay.
That was
You a
it.
good basketball player?
Hopefully she makes the team. Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone?
No, thanks.
No, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience like to speak on this application? Have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second, moved and second, all in favor? Aye. Motion carried.
and of course they wrestled. They're from Hauppauge.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18218, Medford Forest, Inc., 501 Meadow Road, Smithtown. The location of the property, the east side of Meadow Road, 314 feet north of Poplar Drive. The property is zoned R21. The applicant is requesting a variance to increase the maximum permitted slope of the driveway from 8% to 9.5%.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Vincent Tremarco. I represent the applicant. I've submitted the affidavit of posting and mailing to Mr. Donadio. This property is on the east side of Meadow Road, and in that area, most of the properties go uphill, for lack of a better description. My client built the house there. It's a brand-new house. You can see from the picture, to me, it doesn't even look like a 9.5 degree pitch, but apparently that's what it is. There's really no other way to have fixed that because of the slopes. You would have had to do a tremendous amount of regrading, which the town doesn't allow in any event. So we're asking the board to give us a favorable decision. We don't think it'll change the area at all. It's not undesirable. It's a brand-new house. Could we have done it any other way? In this case, no, because there really is, we're not allowed to cut property down, so you have to build it with what you got. Is the variance substantial? When you look at it and you're there, it looks like the picture. It doesn't look substantial at all. Whether the difficulty was self-created, we really couldn't build the house any other way other than the way it's set up there. So we ask the board for its favorable consideration.
All right, thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thanks.
No. Planning?
No, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please? Moved and second, all in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18219, Barbara Schreifer, 2 Pinecone Lane, Comac. The location of the property is the southwest corner of Pinecone Lane and Ronda Drive. The property is zoned R15. The applicant is requesting a variance to reduce the minimum rear yard from 60 feet to 40 feet for an existing 372 square foot rear deck.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Vincent Tremarco. I represent the applicant. I've submitted the affidavits of posting and mailing to Mr. Donadio. I think if you look at the survey, it is kind of an odd-shaped corner property, and this was the only place where you could logically put the house. It has 2 front yards, a side yard and a rear yard, and where they put the deck obviously is the chosen rear yard. It's the only place where we could have put the deck other than on the side, and we would have needed a variance there. The deck is up for many years. We don't think it would have an adverse effect on the character of the area. Could we have achieved this benefit by some other method? I guess we could cut down the deck, but we wouldn't have to cut it down. We'd have to eliminate it because it would be, go right back to the minimum 60-foot rear yard. And the only way we could do it is if we put a deck on grade, and this is, I believe, a high ranch. Whether the variance is substantial, no, we think not. We don't think it has an effect on any of the surrounding neighbors. Was the difficulty self-created? It was built many years ago, and It was done for since it's a high ranch, it was built to the second story so you could walk out from the kitchen and so forth. So we asked the board for its favorable consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thanks.
Planning?
No, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Moved and second, all in favor? Aye. Motion carried.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18221, Insignia Prime Steak and Sushi, 610 Smithtown Bypass, Smithtown, the location of the property, the northeast corner of Smithtown Bypass and Mount Pleasant Road. The property is zoned NB and R10. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the setback to a residential property from 50 feet to 36 feet. To increase the maximum gross floor area of a lot from 50% to 100% due to ESL for high groundwater. Permit environmentally sensitive lands, high depth to high groundwater, less than 10 feet, to be used to calculate the permitted density, building coverage, floor area, or minimum lot area for a proposed 402 square foot first floor addition.
Evening, Donald King, 75 East Main Street, Kings Park, New York. This is for a bridal suite. The nearest residence is 183 feet away. The depth to groundwater is 10 feet. And this will not produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood. It's just a little addition to Insignia. There's no other way to do it except for this variance. It's not substantial. It won't have an effect on the environment, and it's not self-created in that we're here for relief. And I have a memorandum from my engineer, Bill Lottie, I'd like to hand up, which answers any questions you may have with respect to the variance.
Okay. Thank you. Going 50 to 36 feet. 36 is really just in one corner.
Yes. De minimis. And that nearest house is 183 feet away.
Anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
What's the existing distance, Don?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Whatever's on the plan that we show, you'd have to take that out.
So that corner's just open right now? There's
Yeah.
nothing there?
Yeah.
It's not a patio?
There's a patio there that will go.
Patio that's used for what?
I guess drinking, eating.
So it's a, okay. Thank you.
Not going to affect anybody, except the bride and groom.
Any other questions? Planning?
No, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application?
Thank you.
Have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second. Moving second, all in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18222, Tom Rule to Zell, 92 Fort Salonga Road, Fort Salonga, the location of the property, the south side of Fort Salonga Road, 848 feet east of Concord Drive. The property is zoned R43. The applicant is requesting variances to increase the maximum height from 15 feet to 16 feet for a proposed 6,013 square foot detached garage. Permit environmentally sensitive lands to be altered, slopes greater than 15% for a proposed driveway.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Thank you so much.
My name is Vincent Tremarco. I've submitted the affidavits of posting and mailing to Mr. Donadio. You can well see from the site plan survey that this is a very long piece of property, and our proposal is to build a garage-type structure towards the rear of the property. The only two questions or proposals that we're asking the board is, one, a height variance of 1 foot. The proposed building from the average grade to the roof is 16 feet. The other issue, which is mentioned in the application, is to alter environmentally sensitive lands. The only thing that we're really going to do is get construction equipment back there in order to build this garage. Once that's completed, we are not going to build any kind of paved driveway, and we will store collector vehicles in that garage. And on the upper level, it will be used for a sort of a recreation type area for my client. So although we will be altering some of the access areas because it must be disturbed in order to build the building, eventually everything will go to seed, grass, and there won't be a driveway that would be used in the normal sense of how you would think of a garage access. These are collector cars that are going to be stored there and not removed. He doesn't bring them to shows and so forth. So we ask the board for its favorable consideration. We don't think it would have an adverse effect on the character of the area. Really, this is the only place to put the garage. We're not asking for side yards, rear yards, any type of lessening of the requirements which would affect adjoining neighbors. Is the request substantial? It's only 1 foot as far as height goes, and it's minimal disturbance of the land, given the fact that once we get this garage done and built, everything is going to be grass and will not be used for a constant traversing of vehicles. Whether the difficulty was self-created, we didn't build it yet. We're asking the board to give us permission to do so. If the board has any questions, the owner is here. Obviously, there's no environmental effect with this construction. The property is so large that there is no question of health department approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No.
Planning?
No, thank you.
No? Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Moved in second, all in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18223, Five Below. 116 Veterans Memorial Highway, Comac. The location of the property is the south side of Veterans Memorial Highway, just west of the Sunken Meadow Parkway. The property is owned SCB. The applicant is requesting a variance to increase the maximum area of a wall sign from 110 square feet to 308 square feet.
Good evening. Tracy's Permits, 80 Terry Street, Patchogue, New York. Sure, my last name is Rivera, R-I-V-E-R-A. And we're here this evening just to get a sign permit for below 5. We're increasing it from the 110 that's permitted to 308. And you're all familiar with this shopping center. There's no way that you can see any kind of sign unless it's larger. And it's, you know, it's basically in comparison to all the other signs that are there. It's actually pretty small. I think when they were doing the measurement on it, they were counting the back blue area as part of the sign, which is what made the numbers higher than what they are. Any questions?
This store, like the other stores in the area, it's
Oh, yeah, even with the sign being put up, I mean, Whole Foods, you have a hard time seeing, and look how large that sign is. All the signs are very large. I went over this with Blake when we submitted the paperwork on how it's so, the shopping center is so set back. You would need the sign to be larger in order to see it from the street. Thank you.
anyone on the board have any questions?
No, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Have a motion to close the application, please? So moved. Second, all in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
Have a good night. Thank you.
And he's back.
Ready, Blake?
No, that's okay. The next case on the agenda is case number 18224, John Sirocco, 5 Burgundy Lane, Wisconsin. The location of the property, the north side of Burgundy Lane, 300 feet west of Lake Avenue. The property is zoned R15. The applicant is requesting a variance to reduce the minimum side yard from 16 feet to 11 feet for a proposed 329 square foot front entry attached garage addition.
Good evening. John Sirocco, 5 Burgundy Lane, Nesconset, Sarrocco. We propose to convert our garage to living space and add an addition garage to the side of the house, which would, we're asking for a variance from the 60-foot setback to 11-foot. As far as an undesirable change, we feel that the front facade of the house is going to add to the beautification of Nesconset and Burgundy Lane in particular. As far as the benefits, the garage couldn't be put in any other location based on the way the house is laid out. It's going to be set next to the existing garage, and that garage will be converted. The variance is not substantial. In fact, it's de minimis. It's only 5 feet, and we're still keeping 11-foot between us and the property line. As far as an adverse effect on the physical environmental conditions, we see no reason why it would have that impact. And as far as self-created, we're just respectfully asking the board for a favorable ruling. This has not been constructed as of yet.
All right. Thank you. Is there anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thank you.
Nope. Planning?
No, thank you.
Anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18136, CNS Builders, Inc. The location of the property is Skunks Hollow Road, the west side of the terminus of Skunks Hollow Road, 378 feet south of Thompson Hill Road. The property is located in St. James. It is zoned R21. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum lot area from 21,780 square feet to 20,868 square feet due to ESL, slopes greater than 15%. Reduce the minimum road frontage from 40 feet to 25 feet. Reduce the minimum lot frontage at setback from 100 feet to 62 feet. Alter environmentally sensitive lands, slopes greater than 15%, to build within 10 feet of slopes greater than 25%. Those variances are for lot number 1. To reduce the minimum lot area from 21,780 square feet to 19,229 square feet due to environmentally sensitive land, slopes greater than 15%. To reduce the minimum road frontage from 40 feet to 25 feet. To reduce the minimum lot frontage at the setback line from 100 feet to 50 feet. Alter environmentally sensitive lands for slopes greater than 15%, to build within slopes, within 10 feet of slopes greater than 25%. Those variances are for lot number 2, within a subdivision known as Skunks Hollow, number 1184.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I am going to recuse myself from this application. One of the parties that's appearing tonight is a friend,
Right.
family friend. Our kids grow up together, so I'm going to not participate.
Fine.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
I'm recusing myself then.
Oh. Ready? Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Vincent Tremarco. I represent the applicant. This case has been adjourned, so we're not required to submit affidavits of posting or mailing. First thing I'd like to bring out to the board, and I know the board knows this, but the board cannot make a decision until the planning board makes a recommendation to this board. Having said that, let's talk about the application for a minute. Lot number 1, the actual area of the lot is 31,721 square feet. That's more than the half acre required in the zoning ordinance of 21,780. The actual, if you take out environmentally sensitive land, it's only about 1,000 square feet. That brings it down to 20,868. But the actual bulk, the actual land is there. The second thing on lot number 1, the request to reduce minimum lot frontage from 40, which is a requirement on any, in any zoning district, to 25 feet. That's at the entrance. If you think about it, when you go back on this property and you get to the house and you guys have a, I'm starting to talk like Don King now. You folks have the 2 houses laid out in the survey. I ask you to take note of the fact that both of those houses are set back farther enough that they maintain the side yards required under the ordinance. So in relation to any neighbors, they're maintaining the side yards that are required under the R21 zoning district. The only area that gets smaller is the 40-foot requirement at the road, which is down to 25. I venture to say that you're not going to notice, if this subdivision is approved, whether it's 25 feet or 40 feet. It'll be on a filed map. There'll be 2 driveways, and anybody driving in the cul-de-sac is not going to say, wait a minute, it's not 40 feet, it's 25 feet. As far as the slopes, greater than 15%, I'm sorry, variance to reduce the lot frontage from 100 feet to 62 feet. That's at the setback line. But again, the house is set back so that it'll maintain the side yards. So it's really not relevant in the sense that it'll, again, have any effect on any neighbors. As far as neighboring properties, we are maintaining the side yards as required under the ordinance. Slopes greater than 15% and to build within 10 feet of 25% slopes or greater. That whole area is a big hill. And it goes down to, it's like a valley where Skunks Hollow Road ends up in a cul-de-sac. So there's really no other way to build other than to affect steep slopes to some extent. Now, variance number 2 for lot number 2, it's reduced to 19,229 square feet. But the real square footage of the lot, what you see, and the bulk of the lot is 31,701 square feet. That's the actual lot. Again, we're asking for a reduction at the road frontage of 25 feet. However, if you look at the house on lot number 2, same thing goes. It meets the setback, the side yard requirements and the setback requirements of 16 and 18 feet. So again, it will have no adverse effect on the neighbors as we are conforming to what the side yards require. And we have more than the required land as far as bulk goes with both of those lots. The steep slopes, again, in both lots, you really can't build there at all unless you ask for variances on steep slopes. So we don't think that this would have an adverse effect or change the character of the area. All the houses are on slopes there. They don't have a choice. That's the way God made the land. Whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other method, it really can't. We do have the land area, we have the setbacks, and we're conforming to side yards and rear yards. Whether the proposed variance will have an adverse impact on the environment. As this board knows, the health department requires 20,000 square foot per lot in order to build a sanitary system. Here, the health department would look at the size of the lot, not the lot when you take out environmentally sensitive land. So we have 31,721 on one and 31,701 on the other. So there's no adverse effect on the environment. Health department would approve this application. There is no issues there. Whether the difficulty was self-created, well, we didn't build anything yet. We're asking this board for permission to do so. And we hope the board will look at these variance applications for what they are. We could not build anything there if there wasn't variances for these steep slopes. The only other two variances, the setback variance at the building line, we're moving the house back so we don't have that problem. We have the side yards on both sides. We're not even pushing the houses close together within our own subdivision. We're maintaining those lots on both sides. That's why we're not asking you for those variances. And again, when you go down Skunks Hollow and you're in that cul-de-sac, whether it's 25 feet or 40 feet, it really doesn't matter because it's going to look the same and it's not going to look any different than any other lot that's already built there. So we ask the board for its favorable consideration. If the board has any questions, I'll try and answer them.
All right, thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions on the application?
No.
Planning?
Mr. Chairman, planning doesn't have any comments to offer at this time. As Mr. Tramarko stated, the planning board is required to make a recommendation to the Board of Appeals so that when seeker is issued, the board can take some action on the application. We're waiting to see what the recommendation from the planning board is.
All right, thank you. Anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application?
Good evening. My name is Timothy Hill from the law firm Sinreich, Koskoff, and Messina. I represent several of the immediately adjacent owners and homeowners in the vicinity. I will get to the factors that the board is interested in hearing about. But before addressing those issues, there's really some serious fundamental problems with the application. First and foremost, the entry to this proposed area to be developed is not owned by the applicant. The town of Smithtown itself owns a triangular piece of property, and I'll show you, I have it highlighted on a survey. That is the critical access point for what's proposing to be done here. I'm not even sure how we got this far. The town owns all of the frontage on Skunks Hollow Road with the exception of a single point of no width whatsoever. So the applicant, who's a contract vendee actually, has no ownership of the most important part of the parcel that they're proposing to develop. On that note, I would just be curious, in addition, if the town has been placed on formal notice as an adjacent owner of this. I know this has been adjourned, but in its initial noticing and posting, whether the town itself was put on formal notice of this application, because the town, I submit, would be obliged to object to the application for obvious reasons, being that it owns that property. That property was dedicated to the town for a specific purpose, explicitly for potential future highway purposes when this subdivision was first developed. There was a proposed connecting road that never came to be. The town cannot convey this parcel to the applicant. It would violate the New York State Constitution, Article 8, Section 1. And for any number of other reasons, town cannot simply acquiesce to this project that is taking use of town-owned property. I'll come back to this when we speak about the impacts, but the entirety of the town-owned parcel would be completely deforested. It's at the moment a nicely vegetated area, and the proposal is to completely eviscerate that for private commercial use by a proposed developer. I mean, so before we even get into the factors, this issue of ownership, it makes this application a complete non-starter.
I have a question for you. And not, since we don't have counsel, we'd have to defer to either planning or to the town attorney. It's my understanding that the town of Smithtown owns property in front of every home in the town of Smithtown. There's a 10-foot, I guess you'd call it right-of-way.
Sure.
That the town of Smithtown owns, and this is exactly the same as every other parcel.
No.
Or would you please explain why it's not?
Sure, I'll show you on the survey. So I have copies of this too. So if I may, I'll bring these up. So this is much more than the ordinary right-of-way that the town would have in every instance. This is a specifically designated parcel. It appears on the Suffolk County tax map as parcel 16. and it's of a much greater depth than the 10-foot right-of-way. So on this survey, which comes from the application itself, I believe, that yellow highlighted area shows that there's a substantial depth to the town-owned property. So even if you continued this dotted line, which may or may not, I think it's actually more than 10 feet, from this point to here, you still have a substantial portion of the proposed use of this that is entirely beyond that town right-of-way. So both of these proposed driveways substantially intend to use not the right-of-way, but the actual fully owned in-fee property of the town of Smithtown.
And how was it listed on the tax rolls?
It's property owned by the town of Smithtown. The Suffolk County GIS mapping system has the acreage listed, and it's designated as Lot 16. Those are the final numerals in the section, block, and lot number.
Would that tax lot affect the existing driveway that's right next to it? Would that fall under the same thing?
No, this property here is entirely on its own. That first 10 feet, like everybody else's, as was mentioned, is part of that. But everything outside of that is in addition to, and therefore, so if this is 10 feet, that continues. There's all of this additional area that is outside of the right-of-way and is just purely property that's purely owned by the town of Smithtown. Not in the same way that everybody has a 10-foot right-of-way, but it's an actual parcel of property that's owned by the town.
But I believe right-of-ways can be any distance, because there are some roads that are, say, 50 feet wide, some roads are 40 feet wide. Right-of-ways vary. Is there underlying state law that says, I'm just trying to understand this so I can understand your perspective. Is there underlying state law that says that parcels that are adjacent to a town-owned road can only be a certain depth of right-of-way?
Yes, it would be the 10 feet, and the fact is that this is the plot that the applicant is in contract to buy is a rectangular plot. It only touches that right-of-way at this single point here. So there is no actual frontage on Skunks Hollow. So this was the reason that this exists is because in the original formation of this subdivision application, all of this was part of a builder's project. Mr. Frazita has some local history that he'll be able to share with you. But as you can see, this straight line here that represents this border was all part of that subdivision. The builder was required to dedicate that triangular piece because it was thought at some point that there might be a connecting road to Overton Pass, another cul-de-sac in the area. That proposed potential future highway purpose was never acted upon. But this was dedicated for a specific purpose. And that is not the purpose that the applicant is proposing to to use it for. And it's not something that they can even ask to use for.
Okay.
So it really has nothing to do with the ordinary right-of-way. This is a separate parcel that the town owns because they required it to be dedicated when the subdivision was first formed. They can't now look the other way and somehow favor one private interest to the detriment of others.
Okay, well, I think we would have to obviously seek counsel from the town attorney for a recommendation on what their stance would be on it, obviously, since our council can't participate in this.
Sure. So while I believe that's a non-starter, you'll get your answer from council. The application has many other serious problems, respectfully. I'm just wondering, Is it possible to know whether the town did receive notice of this application on the basis of its ownership?
We'd have to find out and let you know. Right now, I have no idea.
There may be some notification in the file itself from the previous mailing. Otherwise, I'd have to look into it.
Okay.
I would note that in the application materials themselves, the applicant's own title insurance company, pending title insurance company, called out this issue themselves and has had a concern about whether there was actually any access to Skunks Hollow Road. You mentioned secret. I understand that that's pending. There are environmental issues with this proposal, and I would submit that when that process is done, this is really something that should require a full environmental impact statement in order to be fully considered for what it's actually asking for, assuming that the title issue does not knock it off the block automatically, which I think it does. Okay. I'll turn now to the variance requests themselves. If I can hand up another set of photos. This photo is taken from the vantage of the straight part of the cul-de-sac as it heads down to the circular turnaround. And just speaking from personal experience when I first visited this area, you could not contemplate from this view, which is the actual view, that there was a proposal to put anything in the area where this is proposed for, let alone two houses. So to speak about the first factor, the character of a neighborhood, this is a quiet cul-de-sac. It's like other cul-de-sacs in the town and other cul-de-sacs in the immediate area. The homes around the circular part of the cul-de-sac are evenly spaced. The driveways are evenly spaced. This proposal intends to cram 4 driveways in an immediately contiguous fashion so that you'll have curb cut, driveway, curb cut, curb cut, driveway, curb cut, curb cut, driveway, curb cut, curb cut, driveway, curb cut. In a very small area, you'll have 4 driveways with almost no space in between them. So that will dramatically change the character of the neighborhood. The other homes on the straight part of the cul-de-sac are likewise evenly spaced, and the driveways are evenly spaced out. So it's really a very aggressive application that will drastically change the character of the neighborhood. The area in question, the part that's specifically owned by the town, and what lies behind it is all natural vegetation. This intends to completely remove all of that, so that will, again, dramatically change the character of the neighborhood. Whether or not the benefits sought by the applicant could be obtained by other methods, I don't believe the application considered or reflects that it considered any alternatives, but the fact is that the applicant is a contract vendee. They are only in contract to buy this property. They're not obligated to buy it. I haven't seen the contract, but I suspect that the contract is likely conditioned upon some level of zoning approval. So this is not somebody that's lived there before that's trying to improve, their parcel. This is a home builder that's looking to turn a profit, and that's certainly a fine thing to do, but this is not the place to do it. This is trying to thread a needle, and it's really a completely incongruous application for this street to squeeze 2 homes into this very narrow area. then there was any question about these factors, it's highlighted when you come to the question of whether these are substantial. The buildable lot, I will leave alone, but those are 5 and 10% requests for relief, which have been found to be substantial. But on the road frontage issue, the reduction from 40 to 25 is a 38% reduction. And all of these are compounded because all of these are asking about 2 lots. So it's 38% on this lot and the one immediately next to it. So you're asking for substantially substandard building, not just once, but twice right next to each other. That's even worse with the lot frontage. Again, that's on one lot, it's from 100 to 62, which is a 38% relief they're seeking. And the one next to it, it's 100 to 50, which is a 50% request for relief. With respect to environmental sensitive land, that applies to slopes of greater than 15%. Some of the proposed slopes are as high as 33%, which is double what's tolerated. So that's 100% or more deviation. Mr. Tramarko respectfully said, well, just don't worry about environmentally sensitive land. You could just, look the other way on that. Well, you can't, you really can't. So in total, there's 10 requests for variance. And these should be viewed not in isolation, but in their totality. Almost all of them are extremely substantial. Taken in combination, it's really just outrageous. In fact, the town code, as a separate issue, section 322-83D of the town code states that this board cannot grant more than, where there's these kinds of requests for variance, shall not grant more than 3 variances. And here they're asking for 10. So as a matter of just simple application of the town code, this application cannot be approved. Whether or not there's an adverse effect on the environment or the physical conditions, again, this is a request to deforest what's a nice, at the moment, buffer and vegetation that exists there. The application plans to remove 0.64 acres of naturally vegetated property. It proposes to remove 25 mature trees. In addition, this cul-de-sac, under existing conditions, frequently experiences flooding when it rains, likely because of the slopes. This application proposes to convert a large percentage of the natural property to impenetrable hard surfaces, which is going to substantially exacerbate the already problematic flooding condition that exists here. I have some photos of that condition that I'll hand up now.
Thank you.
So there will absolutely be a drastic change to the physical and environmental conditions if this project were to be approved. We heard in one of the earlier applications tonight about a proposed driveway that was not going to be paved and would return to its naturally vegetated state. This is the opposite of that. This is creating a runway of hard surfaces that will dump down into this cul-de-sac. And finally, With respect to the issue of whether this hardship is self-created, again, this is a contract vendee. They're not obligated to buy this property. They don't need to go forward with their contract if they don't want to. And frankly, this is a parcel that's not supposed to open to Skunks Hollow Road. It's a completely self-created hardship. It's an invented hardship because this is not supposed to and was never contemplated to have any access to Skunks Hollow Road. In its original existence, this was part of a parcel whose frontage was on North Country Road. So this is an entirely self-created situation. It's a contract vendee who, again, need not go through with the purchase if he doesn't want to. And so those are a host of issues that make this application extremely problematic, above and beyond what I believe is a complete non-starter, being the town's ownership of the front of this parcel. Sure.
The one picture with the for sale sign, was that taken in the cul-de-sac?
That is in the cul-de-sac. That's right in that same area.
The next picture was taken?
That's the other side of the circle.
In
of
the cul-de-sac?
In the cul-de-sac.
And that picture?
That is a backyard. So this cul-de-sac and Overton Pass is another cul-de-sac back up against each other, and that's one of the backyards.
Backyards?
In between the
Okay.
two cul-de-sacs.
Thank you.
Just make sure I didn't have anything left to hand up to you. I do. I believe that completes my remarks. I know that it's the procedure of the board not to permit any further rebuttal, but if there are particular questions that come up, I might hope to be able to respond to those.
Well, everybody's given one opportunity to speak. And Mr. Schmarko will come back and answer, or try to answer your concerns.
Okay.
And that's what it's worth.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to come on up, please?
How are you?
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Dan Rooney, and I live at 6 Skunk Hollow.
Spell your last name, please, for the
Sure.
record.
Rooney. I live at 6 Skunk Hollow Road, St. James. I have lived and raised my family there for the last 20 years. This is my wife, Lisa. My property is directly adjacent and to the north of the proposed, that's my driveway right there.
Okay.
So I'm directly north of the proposed subdivision. Now, first, let me start by saying that I can't believe that this subdivision is even a consideration. It is my understanding, and Tim, I think, brought it up, the application is requesting 3 or more variances that are deemed substantial. They won't even be considered by the board. Now, I don't know if that's a fact, but that's what I read. And the proposed application is requesting 10 variances. Every one of them are substantial, and every one of them will have a negative impact to the character and integrity of this neighborhood. It is also my understanding that the BZA will approve or deny variances based on 5 criteria, which I have up here. I would like to discuss a few of these criteria as it pertains to the proposed subdivision and the negative impact it will have on our neighborhood. Number 1, will the approval change the character of the neighborhood? The approval absolutely will change the character of the neighborhood. It will have a tremendous negative impact. Our current neighborhood is beautifully laid out with evenly spaced driveways and large frontage for each parcel. The simple fact that the applicant is requesting 10 variances should throw up a red flag to any reasonable person saying this is not suitable for 2 building lots. It's just not. The distance between Dr. Diaz's driveway, you can see the end of my driveway, the garbage can is there. Unfortunately, I left the garbage can out, but that was the garbage. From that point to Dr. Diaz's, I measured 45 feet. And they're trying to squeeze 2 more driveways in there. I completely disagree with Tramarko when he says, you're not going to know the difference. you absolutely will know the difference when you come down the cul-de-sac, no question about it. I don't want to go into too much of you got through all the particulars. The road frontage, 38% relaxation to the rules. Lot frontage, 38% relaxation of the rules. Building on ESL, 15% relaxation to the rules. That was on lot 1. You know, Tim brought up lot 2. There's a 50% relaxation to the lot frontage on lot 2. You know, keep in mind, all these compound on each other. It's really amazing to me. And if you ask, will it be a negative impact to the environment? Absolutely. You see the flooding that's going on already. You take down these trees and everything else, it's just going to get worse. We have a major issue right now with flooding. So in closing, let me just say that if the application is approved, it will only benefit the builder and by economic profits. The neighborhood will be left to deal with the incredible negative impact that's left behind. So please do the right thing and deny this application for people who've lived there 20 years and 40 years. Thank you for your time. Do you want to say anything?
I agree completely.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anyone else like to speak? Come on up.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Ruth Diaz. Ruth, R-U-T-H Diaz. I am the house that Dan had shown that's next to the property. First of all, I learned about the advertisement for the houses before I even saw the sign for the application for variance, and consider the fact that I am not used to this kind of circumstances. It just threw me in a loop on why there is already a house that's being advertised in the lot that's next to me, and then I don't even know if that is really real or I don't know, but maybe everybody else understands it, but that threw me into a loop. The fact is that I believe that when I bought this property 39 years ago, the realtor knew that there is no driveway that is accessible to that property. And she said that to me because I made a comment that I like the sanctuary state of my property next to it. Now, when he applied for the variance, I look at the requirement for a driveway. And I always thought that the town would give that requirement for safety or for a good reason. And now, with the things that he just said, it's just that he's saying the words, the numbers, and saying that it doesn't make a difference. To me, numbers makes a difference. And if you can just say that it's smaller, but it does look almost the same, doesn't make substance to me. I don't think that that is proper, and I don't think that is right. Anyway, that is just my ignorance of these facts, but it appeals to me as a regular person. The other problem that I will contribute to this is that right now there are 3 of us who are mothers of the children who have left the community because that's where we found our home, and they have homes nearby to visit us because they are very comfortable that we are in a good neighborhood. That will really affect me because until now I'm still working, and so are Dick that's working, because we are comfortable, we are in our home, and we know that it's safe. The problem is because we are working, we drive, and I still go to the church like 8 o'clock in the morning. If there will be 4 more driveways next to me, there is a change, and I cannot, I'm afraid for whatever that can happen as an accident. The cul-de-sac is also noted for children. We are across the school, the Harbor Country Day School, and there are sports things that are happening next to Thompson Hill Road. And therefore, there are families that go there frequently. An addition of 2 more homes up in the slope and driveways that are next to each other doesn't really make any reason for me that to exist. So from what happens to this is that the trees that they are going to remove, you can remove that one day, but it takes hundreds of years for them to live. It's almost a cruelty to me, in fact, in the way that it's just an operation, surgical operation. They just...
Hey, fellas?
Hey.
Fellas? Can you do that in the back?
Creating a distraction.
We can't. With you talking and doing that, we can't hear. It's okay. Thank you.
That's okay. Yes. I think that the way that he explained on what he is going to do to my neighborhood is an assault to the anatomy of the place. He gave numbers because that is what is required. But there is a beautiful slope there that there used to be trees. So I am as in the golden year, as my 2 other friends, I'm not comfortable with this change because it is entirely one thing that I would not buy a place for if there is a kind of situation that he represented. But I don't have a choice now. And if you approve this, I don't know the next thing that I would do. I am settled in this community. This is my home. And he just assaulted on what he's going to do next door to me. After 39 years, I have a sunroom to look at the beautiful place there. So I just appeal to you that this will cause accidents, not only for the children, but also to the older people in the community, and that also the fact that our nature, the nature that was there to be removed, just like an assault to the anatomy of the place, hurts me. I just want to remind them that Jerusalem was created because of the trees that they planted when it used to be a swamp. So for now, I really believe, and I love nature, and that's one of the things that made me comfortable in where I am now. Right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Brian Miller, Miller. I'm at 14 Skunk Hollow Road. I'm directly across the cul-de-sac from this lot.
Okay.
And Tim and Dan did a great job with a lot of their points mentioning this. I'm not going to double back on all of those because Rich has got a lot more stuff coming too. But I do want to get into some of the this environmentally sensitive land here, which I have a small daughter. We would go up into this land and for walks and just look at the nature in there from time to time. And just to get back on the flooding that Tim mentioned also. When this land is just stripped, all of that water from that great area, we get flooding in our cul-de-sac a lot because storms are getting worse. During a bad storm, like I said, I'm directly across the cul-de-sac, and behind me is state property which goes to 25A, which is a hill. That rainwater comes down that hill into that state land. It forms a lake, and the only access for that lake is my backyard and the cul-de-sac. So I have video, and I don't know if I gave Tim a photo of it, but there's actually a river when it rains hard that comes down my driveway into the cul-de-sac. Now, I'm imagining another river coming down this environmentally sensitive land from this property into that cul-de-sac also. My driveway is at ground level. The houses are all up, but my driveway is at ground level, and so is Mr. Rooney's here. If we get more water, it hasn't happened yet, but if there is more water from this sensitive land, I can see it possibly going up his driveway and up my driveway, back into our homes. You know, that's just from what I'm guessing could happen. You know, at this point, it hasn't happened yet because it just gets to a certain point, because there are drainage problems there too. But that's just a possibility that I'm seeing because of this environmentally sensitive land. Also, one other point about the frontage. A difference of all the houses are basically the same frontage, which makes you drive down, which is one of the reasons why my wife and I bought this property, because when you drive down, every house is different, and it's very wooded, tall oak trees. You know, all this land at the end is going to be gone. It's going to be wide open. All these trees are going to be gone, and you know, we purchased this because it's a very pretty neighborhood. Now, if you take a house and from 40 feet, which is the minimum, I think some of the houses are further than that anyway, and you go to 25 feet, I'm probably about 25 feet from you, I'd say right now. Now, I'm guessing this could be about 40 feet.
We need you to talk with the microphone so we get everything on record, please.
But you can just see the difference.
Yes.
It's a very visible difference.
Right.
So if you come to a neighborhood and all these houses are basically the same, bam, you're going to see some houses like that doesn't fit. You know, so these houses will not fit in this neighborhood if that is going to be okay for that neighborhood. And I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Richard Frazita. I live at 12 Skunks Hollow Road, right next to Bryan, and I'm almost diametrically opposite Lot 16. I'm calling Lot 16 the parcel,
Yeah.
you know, right.
Could you spell your last name, please, for the record?
Frazita, Frazita.
Thank you.
Okay. I have prepared remarks that I want to speak from. So I have something for the chairman, which is really the words you will hear, and some photographs and drawings, which I think will give you a better feel for the things that were said and the seriousness of these issues. So if you'd like, I'd like to hand them out.
Certainly.
These are my remarks.
Okay.
This is for you. It has drawings and photographs. And then I have the same drawings and photographs for each of the members. Thank you. You're welcome. For you. And for you.
Thank you.
I gave away my own notes.
I,
Maybe, I don't want to be flippant. A walk around the neighborhood to help you understand why we feel this application is so outrageous and upsetting. I'm going to separate my attachments. Had I known the PowerPoint, I could have put it on the screen, but I think the pictures give you a much clearer understanding and feeling. Pictures are good. Right? Analog is good. Digital is not always.
Do you want to take this one?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Let me separate my notes, if you would bear with me. Okay. So I mentioned my name, where I live, and I want to tell you how I got here at Skunks Hollow Road. I've been here for 40 years. So my wife and I bought this house in 1979, 7 years after the map of Harbor Brook was dedicated to the town, and Skunks Hollow, as we call it, Skunks Hollow, became livable. The builder, Don Wilton, kept lot number 6. That's the lot currently occupied by, our friend. I'm having a moment. Don Wilton was part of the initial community at Skunks Hollow, and he remained there for about a decade. At the time of my purchase, it was very comforting to know that the builder was going to be a close neighbor. Now, having come from a town on the South Shore that experienced overdevelopment, increasing commercial traffic, noise, and so on and so forth, buying into Skunks Hollow was a perfect answer for the long haul to retirement in a quiet country neighborhood. After exploring the neighborhood, reviewing the map of Harbor Brook, and verifying the basis of the town's tax assessment on my property, my potential property, I saw no possibility, that the design of this beautiful, private, heavily treed cul-de-sac would someday permit more homes to be shoehorned into a small tap on the circle now identified as Lot 16. Furthermore, the map of Harbor Brook was filed on April 13th, which was my wife's birthday. So the deal was cooked, and we bought it without further ado. We didn't haggle. So in my remarks tonight, the use of this tap, now identified as Lot 16, is the major point of contention, but there are 4 very significant points that I want to address. Now, the board has more than a few good reasons to deny this application. If the incredible list of variances were granted, it would permanently alter and disrupt a thoughtfully planned neighborhood, put a gaping hole in a forested vista, which is the hallmark of this private, quiet community of only 8 homesteads. This subdivision will undoubtedly degrade the neighbor's character in numerous ways. I cannot believe the board would support such a travesty. So I ask you, please, reject this application. I want to voice 4 specific objections and reinforce Mr. Hill's strong, comprehensive arguments against approval, as well as the objections of my neighbors. To begin, I will briefly mention the nature of these objections, and then I'll follow up with detail and backup. Objection 1. The proposed subdivision for O'Berry Estate, which I believe is what it's called, has no road frontage, not 40 feet, not 25 feet, no frontage, and therefore no way to access Skunks Hollow Road. This is a fact. It is unclear why this application has not been summarily dismissed. It boggles my mind. In this situation, variance would have lost its meaning. A more fitting word would be amnesty. Objection 2. The root cause of the serious difficulties with this application was self-made by the applicant, a non-resident construction company, by being a participant to the cashing-in stage of a risky land swap deal, a gamble, the current property owners, O'Berry and Piesankowski, made with the prior owner of Lot 15. These risks were well known. Objection 3. The subdivision will deforest a key portion of the vista, and the erection of 2 houses and additional artifacts, driveways and other things, will permanently detract and substantially degrade the character of the neighborhood. contrary to the applicant's claim. Objection 4, this is the last of the objections. The closeness of 4 driveway connections on the circle raises safety concerns as a result of inserting 2 additional driveways between those on lots 5 and 6, the Rooney's and Dr. Diaz. And there are other practical problems like street parking, snow removal, icing, increased flooding. There is no documentation in the subdivision file to verify that the applicant's design for these driveways is in compliance with any design standard for spacing cul-de-sac driveway connections. The proposed plan fails to meet the municipal cul-de-sac connection standard referenced further in my remarks. And I will show you a drawing of this municipal standard. Now, let's go to the first objection. Ingress and egress. Lot 16 was dedicated to the town by Wilton in 1972. This is shown in Figure 1A. This is the Harbor Brook map. You have a copy of that. Lot 16 is a very small parcel. It's triangular shaped, 50-foot wide, a maximum depth of 24 feet, with the longest curved side necking down to a point on the circular curb. It blocks the applicant's access to the road. Dedicating Lot 16 was a proviso directed by the planning board as a condition for approving the map of Harbor Brook. The town clerk's office responded to my FOIL request for the deed to Lot 16, and an interdepartmental search was performed. It was concluded that the map of Harbor Brook is the only record of this land transfer. There is no separate deed. Similarly, I searched the county records at Riverhead, and no deed could be found. Therefore, the Harbor Brook map is the de facto deed to Lot 16, which I will continue to refer to as the deed. Although this deed identifies the town of Smithtown as the owner, the deed also manifests a declaration of use, in other words, a restriction. This is shown more clearly in Figure 1B, which you have. The deed restriction states, and I quote, "To be dedicated to the town of Smithtown for possible future street extension and highway purposes," close quote. These words can only be interpreted one way, which is Lot 16 was purposed for a public road easement, not a private driveway easement, as the applicant would wish it to be. The basis of this restriction is documented in a letter dated December 17, 1970, to Honorable Paul J. Fitzpatrick, Supervisor, and the members of the board, Town of Smithtown, New York, regarding the preliminary layout of Harbor Brook at St. James. This letter stipulates that the following resolution was adopted by the planning board at their regular meeting held the previous day on December 16th. The letter states, quote, "Be it resolved, blah, blah, blah," not applicable to this discussion. Subparagraph E, a 50-foot tap shall be provided on the west side of the cul-de-sac so as to provide for a future road connection, blah, 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 no further connection to this discussion. Respectfully submitted by the planning board and signed by Robert N. Martin, Chairman, Planning Department. To further evidence the exact and singular intention of this restriction to mean a future public, I emphasize public road easement, the Planning Department created a sketch found in the Planning Department's Harbor Brook file, which is reproduced in Figure 2. Which you have. This document shows the aforementioned to be a road highlighted by the parallel lines. They're in red in the actual sketch which I saw. The end boundary was Overton Pass, about an eighth of a mile distance from the tap point on Skunks Hollow Road. Overton Pass, as you well know, is conjoined with Hill Road to form a loop highway with 2 terminal points on Three Sisters Road. Anyone familiar with this loop knows it is not the safest or the most efficient highway to 25A. And obviously, at that time, a new connecting road to Skunks Hollow Road would provide benefit to the then current and possible future residents at Overton Pass, and Hill Road. Does that make sense? The deed restriction includes a second clarifying phrase, quote, "and highway purposes," close quote. Now, the definition of highway, which I found out, is, and I will quote again, "any public street, road, turnpike, or canal which any member of the public has a right to use. A highway is the, quote, entire width between boundary lines of every way or place open to the use of the public for purposes of vehicular travel, including streets and alleys," close quote. The language "and highway purposes" in the deed clearly excludes an exclusive use as a private driveway. Concluding my remarks on objection number 1, it is clear and unambiguous that the deed restriction for Lot 16 was never intended to be a driveway easement to or from any lot outside the boundaries of Harborbrook, not by Wilton and not by the Town Planning Department. Furthermore, Dan Wilton never designed a provision in the Harborbrook layout for additional half-acre lots, other than the 8 shown on the filed map. If the intent of the restriction was not as I just stated, there would be no reason for any restrictive declaration on the deed. The conclusion is consistent with everything each one of our neighbors knows. Lastly, the deed restriction runs with the land, and it is enforceable in New York State. Therefore, it is my understanding as a layman, now I'm not a lawyer, that the town lacks the authority to grant the variance, or more correctly stated, waiving the road frontage zoning requirement in its entirety for private use. The second issue, self-created difficulties. This is a bit of history. It is important to understand the history of lot ownership and boundaries to see how the difficulties with this application were self-created. It has nothing to do with slopes, and yet everything to do with slopes. To begin, in 1972, the envelope of Harborbrook excluded lots 15 and 14. This is shown in Figure 3 that you have. These 2 approximately 1-acre lots were separately owned. Each lot had a boundary on 25A and was zoned half commercial and half residential. The residential was the interior portion, now under consideration. Regardless, each whole lot had street access to Route 25A. Each of the R21 halves were considered too difficult to develop due to their dimensional limitations, very steep slopes, and lack of easy access through the commercially zoned portion to Route 25A. And I had spoken to the owner of Lot 15 long ago. He was a friend, is a friend. And I asked him, why don't you develop your residential portion? He said, it's impossible. I said, thank you. Because I was always worried. More recently, in 2008, the distinct owners of the lots 15 and 14, long parallel lots extending from 25A to almost Skunks Hollow Road, acted for reasons of mutual benefit by agreeing to a land swap. Each one of these 2 lots, that is 15 and 14, was subdivided into separate R21 and commercial zone parcels, resulting in 4 smaller lots. Following the subdivision into 4 lots, the owners swapped title to selected ones. For example, the owner of Lot 14, O'Berry and Piesankowski, took title to the 2 residential portions now designated on the map as lots 15.2 and 14.3. This is shown in Figure 4. By doing so, they voluntarily surrendered any possible road access, and both of these R21 lots still remained with no frontage, as it had been since around 1970. Nevertheless, the intention of O'Berry and Piesankowski was to sell these newly created R21 lots to a builder, the applicant, but to overcome the lack of frontage and mitigate other issues, the current application requests another subdivision to rearrange their common boundary, which were parallel before, on a diagonal line as a dashed line. This is shown in Figure 4. This new proposed common boundary terminates at the midpoint of the 50-foot boundary of Lot 16, the town of Smithtown lot, the gateway. This maneuver renames the proposed lots as Lot 1 and 2 in the application drawings. Each lot benefits 25 feet of the 40 frontage requirement, and the applicant further requests variances to forgive the missing 15 feet needed for each lot to be compliant. The real truth is, you can't subdivide 0. They have no frontage. Schedule B of the applicant's title search warned that to avoid insurance coverage exceptions, proof is required to show that the premises to be insured herein have the rights of egress and ingress and frontage into and over Skunks Hollow Road. Such proof has not been presented. Consequently, the owners created a sizable risk by proceeding with the land swap in the first place, and now the applicant is apparently pursuing the purchase of the land knowing these risks. I raised the question, if the applicant or the property owners, and I don't mean this in any sarcastic way, did they get any indication from anyone that said, the town will grant you variances? I mean, this just boggles my mind. So, and I was in business years ago, and I understand risks and taking risks. I would never go into a risky deal like that. I would never swap away my only lifeline to road access for a possibility of a gamble that was filled with flaws and obstacles. Didn't make any sense. But they did it, and that's why I say it was self-created. The owner's self-created, and the applicant is riding the coattails of that risky venture, yet he hasn't purchased the property yet, so he's really not at risk. But the real risk was created in this whole application by the original property owners. I mean, if you were to let them do what they're